Powerful combos, imbued weapons and shadow magic are all important parts of the Rogue's toolkit in Diablo 4. However, with so many options, it can be pretty easy to get overwhelmed by this more technically challenging class, but we've got your back. We'll go over the best skills for a growing rogue and show you how to make the most of this sneaky trickster. This Twisting Blades focused build will have you at level 50 in no time. So let's talk about the active skills you'll need for a growing rogue. Unlike some builds in Diablo 4, you will want to pick up and keep a basic skill. In this case, it's Puncture. Not only does this generate energy, which is the rogue's main resource, but you can also apply a lot of vulnerable debuffs to enemies to help you clear rooms faster. And make sure to pick up Enhanced Puncture and Fundamental Puncture as well when you can, because Puncture is a melee ability but with range. So it's great for dealing damage while in boss fights, as many boss fights tend to have ground AoE effects, especially world bosses like a Shava. Your next skill should be Twisting Blades, and this is a priority skill, so you should pick this and upgrade it with your next skill points, taking Twisting Blades, Enhanced Twisting Blades, and Advanced Twisting Blades, because Advanced Twisting Blades reduces your cooldown for every enemy the blades pass through, which is an excellent passive that will increase how often you can rotate through your skills. But don't prioritize maxing it out too fast, and focus first on getting access to all the skills you need for this build, because next you're going to need to think about Dash or Shadow Step, as these are the cornerstone skills for rogues that improve your mobility massively. Dash is a 2-charge ability that pairs brilliantly with the returning Twisting Blades. Timing it correctly so your blades slice through enemies left in your wake can be hugely beneficial. So if you do decide to go for Dash, we'd recommend picking Enhanced Dash and Disciplined Dash as follow-ups, as Disciplined Dash is a great CC passive because it will daze and slow enemies even more. However, you could also consider Shadow Step, which improves your movement by 50% and causes you to become unstoppable. In this case, we'd recommend taking Enhanced Shadow Step and Methodical Shadow Step as well, because Methodical Shadow Step provides even more CC with stuns. Next, we'll be moving into the Subterfuge skill tree, and here you also have another choice to make. You can pick either Dark Shroud or Concealment. Dark Shroud is probably the most commonly picked ability in this build, as it provides a flat damage reduction as well as the potential for a movement speed buff. So if you choose Dark Shroud, you should also pick Enhanced Dark Shroud and Subverting Dark Shroud to go with it. However, Concealment is also a solid pick as it provides stealth, a massive movement buff, as well as a flat energy regeneration rate whenever you use the ability. So if you pick Concealment, you should also consider choosing Enhanced Concealment and Countering Concealment to buff it. Although Dark Shroud is considered the best ability for an endgame Twisted Blades build, if you're rushing quickly through World Tier 1, which is an interesting idea for fast leveling, then Concealment may make more sense. More damage is better, especially if you're not taking as much damage as you might be on a higher world tier. For the next part of the build, we need to pick an imbuement type, and we've seen fun Twisting Blade builds with both Poison and Shadow Imbuement. Poison Imbuement causes poison damage over time, as well as provides massive damage buffs for critical strikes with poison, and it's great for single target builds. Shadow Imbuement is designed for clearing large groups of enemies, as enemies affected by this will explode when killed. You can also use Consuming Shadows to generate energy whenever an enemy is killed by shadow damage. And now, I'm going to ask you a big question. To Shadow Clone or not to Shadow Clone? We've tested a build that utilised Shadow Clone as an ultimate and one that didn't. While Shadow Clone is probably the best ultimate out of the lot, we found that the cooldown is quite long and potentially suffocating in an otherwise high rotation, fast paced build. So if you don't take Shadow Clone, you could pick up passives from the ultimate tree instead, such as Innovation for extra energy regeneration, or Adrenaline Rush and Haste for more movement speed. That being said, you might just like how bursty Shadow Clone feels, so you can take it for that fancy ultra powered damage for 15 to 20 seconds. And last, let's talk about momentum. The vast majority of rogue leveling builds, both Twisting Blades and other variations, make use of momentum for its massive conditional buffs. You get extra damage reduction, better energy regeneration, and increased movement speed while building stacks of momentum. These are stacked by hitting enemies from behind or hitting dazed, stunned, or frozen enemies. These are all debuffs you can inflict on your own as a rogue, but if you're playing with a group, you can also expect to make use of other classes' CC abilities too. So let's move on to the passive buffs and skills you should pick up as a rogue in this build. First is Siphoning Strikes. Rogue has the damage while healthy damage bucket, which means you do want to prioritise the Siphoning Strikes passive in the second tree. You need to pick up Sturdy and then Siphoning Strikes, which you can max to level 3. This is one of the key ways to help you regenerate health above that 80% threshold for the damage while healthy buff to occur. Likewise, you'll want to pick up Weapon Mastery in the third tree, as this flat damage boost is extremely strong. In the Subterfuge tree, you can pick up Exploit and Malice for more flat damage boosts. Malice also stacks damage based on how often you're inflicted vulnerable damage, which happens quite frequently when you're using Puncture. And finally, keep an eye out for Precision Imbuement, a flat critical strike chance for imbued skills. As you level up your rogue, you'll unlock new specializations. The first one to pick up is at level 20. This one's called Inner Sight. It allows for very strong burst damage when you have unlimited energy for a short window. This means you can cast Twisting Blades over and over again, which provides huge damage bursts for taking down bosses when you're fighting alone. And let's not forget about aspects either. For the Twisting Blades build, you'll definitely want to pick up the Blade Dancer's aspect as soon as possible. And this one's unlocked via Jalal's Vigil dungeon in Skullsglen. It causes the blades to rotate around your character for a short time after they return, which deals extra damage. And also keep an eye out for the Edgemaster's aspect, which is unlocked by completing the Old Stones dungeon in Skullsglen. This aspect buffs skills to deal extra damage while your resource is full. Combine this with Inner Sight, and you can see how powerful this flat damage buff can be. Next, let's move on to stats priority. The main stats for Twisting Blade rogues to look out for depends on the items. For example, armor pieces generally apply defensive patterns like armor and life, but you should also keep an eye out for cooldown reduction, damage reduction, and movement speed. Rings and amulets are typically where you're going to find these powerful and often useful offensive abilities, such as critical strike chance and energy cost reduction. And always double check new items when they appear, especially legendaries, as they have useful aspects and provide excellent buffs, even if some stats are lower than currently equipped items. So there's our advice for the best builds for a growing rogue in Diablo 4. I've been Luke Gould, thanks for watching, and make sure to check out thegamer.com for more guides and advice.